As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a professional athlete. At first, I wanted to be a soccer player, but then I realized that my strength on the field was that I could outlast everyone, and that's when my love for running was born. And I pursued running with everything that I had. I had the mentality that I would get what I worked for, and that as hard as I worked, those were the results that I would get. So I poured my heart and soul into my training, running with the boys every day in practice, and making sure that I was doing every single thing I could to be as successful as possible. And I continued on with that same mentality when I went to college. And although it brought me a ton of success, and at a surface level, it looked like I was absolutely thriving, I actually was really struggling, and my win at all costs mindset, perfectionist tendencies, and need for control over all aspects of my training and performance manifested into a pretty severe eating disorder that plagued me all through college, high school, and my pro career. But no one really knew. What people saw was a girl who was achieving her dreams, but what they didn't see was everything that I had sacrificed to get there, which included my health, happiness, quality of life, and chances of having longevity in the sport that I loved so much. Now, this isn't to say that I'm a victim or that it's anyone's fault that I was struggling. Everything I showed on social media was me smiling, PRing, having a great time, thriving. But all of that really came to a halt when COVID hit and I got an injury. I was like, okay, it's fine. I'm just going to come back. I'll cross train for 6 weeks and then we'll be right back to training. And that was what I did. But then I got injured again. And I was like, you know what? At least I only have to cross train for 6 weeks and then I can get right back to training. And that's what I did. I just kept coming back and hoping that it would be different the next time. But that spring, when I got a stress reaction in both shins, it became evident that my body was not holding up to training. It was telling me that it could not take this anymore. And when I tried to come back from that injury, everything just felt really hard. The effects of inconsistent training were really hitting me, and you can see it in my YouTube thumbnails from here on out. They start getting a little bit bleak, and it's slightly concerning. At this point, my coaches and the medical staff on the team were legitimately concerned about me, and they called me on a Monday and told me that I would be going to eating disorder treatment. And there wasn't really much that I could say or do that would stop that. So that Thursday, I packed up and went to Denver, where my parents met me and they helped me get settled into the hotel where I would live for the next 6 weeks. But the thing with me going to treatment was that I was still training for the Olympic trials, because this was in 2021. Which was an Olympic year, and I had already qualified in the 3,000 meter steeplechase, and I knew that I really wanted to do that race and to continue pursuing my dreams on the running side, because that was one of my biggest motivations for trying to recover, was to be able to run consistently and not get injured and feel really good in training. So I wasn't giving up on that just because I was going to treatment. I remember on my first day, I just did not feel prepared. I literally remember leaving after dinner on the first day and immediately calling Spencer crying because I was so overwhelmed and literally just didn't know how in the world I was going to survive 6 weeks of this. But it did help that my mom was there to keep me company outside of treatment, and I could call Spencer whenever, and he was so supportive throughout the entire thing. And of course, I was able to train. And because I was working up towards the Olympic trials, training also meant that I got to go to races. So I knew that at the end of this first week of treatment, I would get to travel to a race. And that was literally the only thing keeping me going. For my first race of the outdoor track season, I would be running at the Sound Running track meet just outside of Los Angeles, and I was very, very nervous, but also so appreciative for the opportunity to race. I ended up running 15:18 for 5K, which wasn't a PR, but it was pretty close, and given the circumstances, I was super happy about it. This race gave me a lot of hope, and it reinvigorated me to go back to treatment. The ability to race and train was a huge silver lining to me, but I was still really struggling with constantly thinking negatively about having to be in treatment and thinking about how it was taking away from my training. And I was working to reframe those thoughts and think of it as a positive experience. Instead of something that I had to do, it was something that I got to do, and I wanted to get as much out of it as I could. Being positive was made easier by my sister visiting for her birthday and getting to celebrate with her, as well as making friends in treatment and starting to really feel like I had a community, and also getting to see some really beautiful parts of Colorado. Despite all that radiant, glowing positivity, my journal entries from this time were still bleak. I just wasn't having a good time with workouts. I felt like I was emotionally and mentally drained from treatment, and I was having a really hard time pushing myself. And I was just so nervous for the trials and feeling like there was so many things stacked against me in my build up towards that event. Despite my frustration, I did feel like treatment was helping me to learn how to fuel myself better, especially around training, and it was also giving me a really good understanding of just how much fuel was needed for training, and I took those skills and brought them to my next race, which was Portland Track Festival. I am in Portland, and my breakfast's ready. Yay. It's nice to be here, just been relaxing. We're just eating some pre-race burritos.
Mine's delicious.
Mine's slightly more delicious. Honestly, one of the hardest parts about treatment was not getting to see Spence, so being able to see him on races was the best thing ever. He was also great when I was away from treatment, just helping me make sure that I ate enough and stayed on track with everything, which wasn't easy leading into a race because a race would usually be a trigger for me. But anyways, I was in the steeplechase at Portland Track Festival and, getting after it, really hoping for the best. I had no idea how I would run because, like I said, I'd been training alone and it hadn't been going great, but I had high hopes. However, this race felt really similar to the workouts where I just could not mentally engage. I felt like I had no mental headspace to get to that place I needed to be in to race successfully, and he ended up placing 6th and running a time of 9:38, which was not what I was hoping for, but it wasn't the worst. Anyways, the meet was fun, and seeing my teammates was the best. When I went back to treatment, I was really motivated to train hard because I wanted to improve off of my result. But something I haven't really mentioned yet is that I was having to do almost all of my training at 6 a.m., which was wearing me down incredibly. Every day I would wake up at 6 to work out and then go to treatment afterwards for 10 hours where I would go through emotional turmoil, and literally, I cannot describe to you how difficult this was for me. I can't imagine something more exhausting, and it was wearing me down in a bad way. I was constantly having to remind myself, and have Spencer remind me, of exactly what I was working for. This entire time, I was still trying to consistently put out content on YouTube and Instagram, but it was getting increasingly harder, especially with how frustrated I was with how workouts were going. I reached a breaking point when I was trying to make an outro for a YouTube video after a particularly challenging workout. I hadn't watched this until a few days ago when I found it deep in the archives of my camera. It really hit me, and this is pretty much the reason that I made this video, because I remember how I felt in this moment. Running has just been really hard, and I haven't been with the team, and I miss having running be the focus of my day.
It's really hard to get in good workouts right now. I'm just struggling because I have a lot going on, and it's really difficult to find the mental headspace to work out and go really hard. I'm so passionate and I want this so badly, but it's really difficult right now. And being a professional runner has always been my dream. It's just really difficult to do it right now. That's all for now, folks.
After that workout, I went to treatment and we listened to a TED Talk by Brené Brown about vulnerability. Afterwards, we had to write out what our values were, and my top one was authenticity. Everything was lining up to let me know that I needed to post and be public about what I was going through. Not just to help other people, yes, to help other people, but also to be my authentic self and show up as the real me, instead of trying to hide and pretend like everything was fine when it clearly was not. When I was going through all of this, I also felt like I was the first one, when I know that that's not the case at all. So I wanted to be able to be an example for other people and show the nitty-gritty middle of this process. Going into the Olympic trials, I was a nervous wreck. I truly did not know what would happen in this race. I had been going through it, as we say, and I was just still a bit emotionally and mentally ravaged from the entire treatment experience. Not to say that it was a negative experience, just that it was incredibly challenging. But I had been discharged and I felt a huge sense of freedom going into this race, and I was just happy, looking forward to a whole summer of racing at this point. So, at the beginning of the race, I'm just thinking, okay, let's hang in the pack, see what happens. I don't need to make this race happen. The top 5 get automatic qualifying spots to the final, so that is all I need to do. But I also was really struggling to hurdle, and when the move off the front went, I found myself off the back of it, and every time I tried to catch up, we'd get to another barrier and I'd fall a little further behind, and it was just this endless cycle of me trying to catch up and then having bad form over the barrier and falling behind, and it was really frustrating. But I hung in there, even though there were points in this race where I really just wanted to quit. I remember distinctly thinking, with about 2 or 3 laps to go, okay, it's not my year. Maybe I just turn it in now and just move on. But I hung in, I got 6th in my heat. It wasn't an auto qualifier, but after the results of the second heat, I did end up making it to the finals off of time, so I was going to the finals. For the finals, I thought it would be a little bit more relaxed, I'm here and I don't really have anything to lose. Let's just see what I can do. But that wasn't quite it. It was more of me crying in the bathroom before the race, just scared that I wouldn't live up to expectations, that I would fail. People would see it and think, oh wow, she decided to recover and now she sucks. And I didn't want people to not recover because they saw me sucking in a race, and that made me very nervous, and I just was putting all of this pressure on myself to perform and represent people who had struggled with eating disorders, people that were going through recovery. And I just really wanted to be able to put my best race forward and show people that it was possible even when you were struggling and you were trying to overcome an eating disorder. And because of that, it was tough to even make it to the start line. My coach had to convince me to just go into the race and take it 1 kilometer at a time. And that's what I did. And it did result in me kind of falling off the pack almost immediately, because I was just in my own world, running my own race, thinking whatever I can do today is okay. I'm running this 1 kilometer at a time because that's what I can do on this day. And I ended up actually running a PR which shocked me. And I got 8th in this race, which vastly exceeded my expectations. And if you had told me a year prior that that's how I had done in the race, I would have been disappointed. But given the circumstances and everything that I had gone through, I was incredibly proud of the way that I had persevered and worked through everything and been able to come away with a personal record, 8th place in the US, and the start on my road to recovery.
Okay, so my mom said I needed to walk into and out of my drills with more sass, more panache. So here's her demonstration of what she expects from me. This is an unattainable standard that we have here. I will never, ever be able to reach this level of sass. Oh man, look at her go. This is the bar I have to live up to.